Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. The yellow dress was still warm when I found it on the floor. Not folded, not tossed, just placed, like it had been peeled off in silence, in a rush, in guilt. The kind of guilt that doesn't close drawers or hang things back up. It was 3:11 a.m. The house smelled like almond lotion and someone else's cologne. I knew that cologne. I hated that I knew that cologne. She wasn't home, but her phone was. I didn't check it. I couldn't. Not because I respected her privacy. That ship had sailed months ago, but because I already knew what I'd find. And I wasn't ready to read the captions under his name. I wasn't ready to know if she used emojis when she lied to me. I sat on the edge of the bed like an idiot, holding that dress in my hands like it was evidence in a case I was too scared to prosecute. My wife, Lorna, had told me she was going out for air. That was at 9:46 p.m. I said, "If you go, don't come back." She didn't even pause. She just grabbed her coat and slipped out like I was a coat rack she didn't need anymore. I thought she'd cool off. I thought she'd call. I even thought she might text a stupid emoji and say, "Fine, I'm sleeping at Trish's." But what I didn't expect was what happened when I finally stood up and walked toward the kitchen. The back door was slightly open, not broken into, not forced, just cracked. Outside, on the porch, sat a black duffel bag. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers. And when I unzipped it, everything changed. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. And by sunrise, I had already packed a bag of my own. But not to leave. To follow. It took me a full minute to convince myself to touch the zipper. The bag was just sitting there, black, scuffed, too clean to be forgotten, too placed to be accidental. The kind of bag you bring when you know you're not coming home. Or worse, when you're planning to bring something. Or someone. Back with you. I knelt beside it, palms sweating, ears ringing. My house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the fridge in the next room. But in my head, it sounded like a siren. I kept telling myself this was a misunderstanding, some bizarre coincidence. But deep down I knew. I knew this was a threshold. Whatever was inside, I wouldn't be able to unsee it. The zipper caught halfway through, a snag in the fabric, like even the bag was warning me, "Stop now. Turn back." But I didn't. Inside were clothes. Men's clothes. Folded neatly. Too neatly. A gray hoodie with the logo of a gym I had never stepped foot in. A toothbrush in a plastic sleeve. A phone charger. A black notebook. A roll of cash, rubber banded so tight it looked like it might snap. And on top of it all, her scarf. Her favorite one. The one I gave her our first Christmas together. Burgundy with little gold threads. She always said it made her feel held. Now it felt like it was mocking me. I didn't hear her come in. That's the part that keeps playing in my head. 1 second, I'm standing in the kitchen with that scarf in my hand. The next, she's behind me, soaked, breathing hard, cheeks flushed like she'd just sprinted through a storm. We locked eyes. Her mouth opened, closed. Her pupils flicked to the bag, then back to me. "You weren't supposed to see that," she whispered. And just like that, I felt like I was watching someone I didn't know anymore. Same face, same voice. But the woman in front of me had secrets stitched into her skin. "I told you not to come back," I said. My voice cracked. I hate that it cracked, but it came out anyway. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and said something that made my blood run cold. "We need to leave. Now." Her voice was low, almost hollow, like she wasn't even speaking to me. "We need to leave. Now." I didn't move. My hand was still holding her scarf like it meant something, like it hadn't just been lying on top of some stranger's duffel bag, soaking up the scent of someone who didn't belong here. My brain was trying to make sense of her urgency, trying to pretend she was scared for me, that this was some kind of danger we could face together. But then she made the mistake of reaching for the bag. I stepped in front of it. "No," I said, louder than I expected. My voice echoed a little too much in the silence. "Not until you tell me who he is." She blinked, once, slowly. Her jaw tightened. "It's not what you think." That phrase. That tired, pathetic phrase. I almost laughed, and that scared me more than anything. Because I've never laughed when I was this close to breaking. "I think," I said, stepping closer, "that you've been sneaking around with someone. I think you lied to my face for weeks, maybe months. I think you packed a bag for him, or maybe he packed one for you. And I think that somewhere in your mind, you thought I was too spineless to say anything about it." Her eyes didn't flinch, but something behind them did. A twitch in the corner. A flicker of something more than guilt. Was it fear? She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then, his name is Curtis. I had never heard that name before in my life. And somehow, that made it worse. Curtis. Like he was just some guy. Not the guy. Not the threat that had been eating away at my marriage. Just some casually mentioned name like he was someone I should have already known about. He wasn't supposed to come here, she said, glancing at the door. Not this soon. That phrase stopped me cold. Not this soon. She had plans. My stomach turned. What did you do, Alma? She opened her mouth, and we both froze when a shadow passed by the window. A tall one. She bolted to the back of the house. I ran after her, questions exploding in my head like fireworks. She pulled open the bedroom closet, yanked down a small lockbox from the top shelf, and started stuffing it with papers. Receipts, IDs, even an old passport I thought she'd lost years ago. I stood in the doorway, frozen. You're not just cheating, I muttered. You're running. She didn't deny it. Just looked at me, jaw clenched, and said, you can stay if you want, but I'm not dying in this house tonight. And that's when the front door creaked open. The front door creaked wider, slow, deliberate, like someone wanted us to hear it. Like they were giving us a chance to run or freeze. Alma stopped stuffing the lockbox, her hands shaking now. She glanced toward me, but I could tell her focus was somewhere else. She wasn't looking at her husband anymore. She was calculating something. Options. Exit routes. And I suddenly realized she wasn't protecting me. She was deciding whether or not to leave me behind. I stepped out into the hallway, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The kitchen light was still on. I could see the edge of the open door, just slightly ajar now, the night air seeping in like smoke. And then, a boot. A black one. Heavy, military-looking. It stepped forward onto the hardwood floor like it belonged here. And then another. A man emerged, tall, lean, probably mid-40s, dressed in gray like he was trying not to be remembered. I didn't recognize his face, but he looked at me like he knew mine. Merrill, right? He said. Calm. Like we were neighbors catching up over coffee. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was hoping you wouldn't be home, he continued. But then again, I was told you wouldn't be. Behind me, Alma cursed under her breath. That was all the confirmation I needed. He took another step forward. Didn't even glance toward her. All eyes on me. I didn't know what this was, a robbery, a setup, something darker, but I knew, instinctively, that this man was not here for money. He was here for me, or for what I represented. You brought him here. I snapped at her, stepping back. You brought this into our house. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she hissed. But the man just kept walking, calm as can be, and stopped about 6 feet away. I'm going to ask you a question, he said, voice low. And I want you to think very carefully before you answer. I nodded, against every instinct in my body. Did you open the bag? My throat tightened. I didn't respond, but I guess the look on my face said enough. He sighed, not in anger, in disappointment. Then he said something that turned my legs to water. You just involved yourself in something that doesn't forgive accidents. Alma lunged forward then, not toward me, not toward him, but for the bag. She grabbed it, spun, and bolted toward the hallway closet. I don't know what she was thinking, that she could hide it, destroy it, bargain with it. But that's when the man pulled something from his coat. Not a weapon, a phone. He raised it, took a photo of the bag in her hands, and calmly said, now I have proof. You just made it worse. I didn't know who to be angry at. Her, him, myself. So I did the stupidest thing possible. I grabbed the bag out of her hands and hurled it into the fireplace. It didn't catch right away, but then something inside popped. Not like paper or fabric, like something chemical. The fire roared, flashed green for a moment, then turned dark, angry red. The man didn't move, just stared into the flames like he was watching a body burn. Then he said something I will never forget. You think you're fixing things, but all you've done is start the clock. And with that, he turned and walked out the door. The flames didn't stop after the bag turned to ash. They kept eating through the edge of the hearth, like whatever had been inside had soaked into the brick. I stood there watching it, hoping that when the fire died, so would the nightmare. But even as the light dimmed, I could feel something had shifted, not in the house, not even in Alma, but in the world around us. Like we'd opened a door that didn't know how to close. Alma was pacing now, frantic, mumbling half-formed words. Her hands were shaking as she pulled down the blinds and started dragging chairs in front of the windows. I didn't move. I just watched her, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw someone I never really knew. Someone who had lived beside me for 10 years and somehow kept an entire other life sealed just under the surface. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I asked the one question I thought might keep me sane. What was in the bag? She stopped mid-step. Didn't turn around. I said. I repeated louder this time. What was in the bag? Still nothing. Make coffee. That's when she finally turned to me. And her face was not scared. Not ashamed. It was resigned. Merrill, she said quietly. You weren't supposed to find it. It was meant to be gone before you got home. He wasn't supposed to show up until next week. We had time. We? I repeated. Alma looked down at her hands. It was a drop. That's all. A pass-off. I was doing someone a favor. A one-time thing. I didn't ask questions, and they promised I wouldn't get pulled in. But you have been pulled in, I snapped. And now I have too. And for what? What the hell were you moving? I don't know, she said. That was the deal. No names. No contents. Just pick it up, pass it along. Quiet money. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. I married a woman who painted landscapes and collected tea sets. Now she was doing blind favors for anonymous men in combat boots. I needed air. I walked outside, barefoot, still half-dazed, and sat on the edge of the porch. The street was empty. Silent. Like the world was holding its breath. That's when I noticed it. A silver sedan across the street. No lights. No engine. Just parked. Watching. I squinted through the darkness, trying to make out who was behind the wheel, but the windshield was too dark. I stood, waved, even shouted something. No reaction. I took a step off the porch, and the headlights blinked on. The engine roared to life. And then, the car peeled away. Fast. Gone. I stood there, heartbeat thudding in my throat, realizing that whatever Alma had dragged into our lives wasn't over. Not even close. Because 20 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You destroyed our property. Now you owe us. I stared at the screen for a long time, as if reading the words again would make them make sense. You destroyed our property. Now you owe us. No name. No demand. Just an accusation and a debt hanging in the air like a threat made of smoke. Alma was behind me, still muttering to herself, pacing like she was trying to rewind the last 2 hours in her mind. I showed her the message. She didn't blink. She didn't ask who sent it. She just whispered, "They weren't supposed to text you." That was when I realized something terrifying. She wasn't surprised. She was embarrassed. Ashamed. She had always expected herself to be the one caught up in this mess. Not me. I wasn't supposed to get my hands dirty. I wasn't supposed to unzip the bag. I wasn't supposed to matter. But now I did. And the moment she realized I did, she looked at me differently. Like I was no longer just collateral damage. I was now a liability. I backed away from her, holding my phone like it could somehow shield me. Tell me everything, I said. Now. I can't, she whispered. Not here. Not while they're listening. Listening. She nodded once, then walked to the living room and turned the television on, loud. Static fuzzed across the screen. She pulled me into the laundry room, closed the door behind us, and whispered like we were inside a war bunker. There's more, she said. I didn't just carry the bag. I watched it. Watched it. I was paid to hold it. For 4 days. And to make sure no one touched it. It was just supposed to sit in the house. Not open it. Not move it. Just hold space for it. I stared at her in disbelief. Why you? I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want anything to do with anything anymore. But she placed it in my hand anyway. Someone dropped this off yesterday, she said. They said if you open the bag, to give you this. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it. 5 words. Your silence is your payment. I didn't understand. Is this blackmail? I asked. A warning? What does this mean? But she shook her head. No, it's worse. It means they're not going to kill you. My stomach dropped. That's worse. It means, she said carefully, you're now useful to them. Before I could say another word, the power went out. Not just in the house. The entire street went black. Then my phone buzzed again. New message. No number. Just one line. Don't leave the house. We're not done with you yet. The moment the lights died, something primitive clicked on inside me. Not panic, something colder. The kind of silence you feel in your bones before an earthquake hits. I looked at Alma, and she didn't flinch. Not even a flicker of surprise. That told me everything I needed to know. She expected this. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this soon, but somewhere in her twisted timeline, the blackout was always going to come. The phone buzzed again in my hand, and for a split second, I debated throwing it into the sink. But curiosity, or maybe cowardice, won. I looked down. New message. Open the safe in your closet. No sender. No instructions beyond that. What's safe? I asked aloud, but Alma was already walking. Not running. Just walking. Like a woman walking to her own execution, slow, certain, dead inside. In our bedroom closet, behind a row of untouched suits and coats I hadn't worn since my brother's wedding, Alma pushed aside a hanging shoe organizer and tapped twice on the drywall. Then, casually, she slid her fingernail beneath a thin seam I'd never noticed. A square panel popped open with a soft click. Behind it, a safe. Digital. Matte black. Like it had been there the whole time. I staggered backward. You installed a safe in our house? She didn't answer. She just punched in a 6-digit code without hesitation. The lock chirped, and the door swung open. Inside was a small metal case. No labels. Just a long barcode across the top and a red wax seal over the latch. I took a step forward, hard in my throat. What's in it? That depends, she said quietly. On what? On whether they want you to know, or just carry it. I didn't move. She reached in, took the case, and held it like a baby. It wasn't supposed to go to you, she said. But when you burned the bag, the deal shifted. You erased the drop point. So now you are the drop point. My knees nearly gave out. I don't even know what that means. I barked. I'm not a courier, Alma. I'm not a criminal. I'm a guy who makes instructional videos about power tools on YouTube. I know, she said. That's why they picked you. That sentence shattered something inside me. They picked me because I was invisible, boring, predictable, safe. The kind of man who walks his trash out the same time every Sunday. The kind of man whose neighbors forget exists. The kind of man no one would suspect of carrying something dangerous or being watched by dangerous people. You're going to deliver this, she said. I laughed, sharp and hollow. No, I'm not. Yes, you are, she whispered. Because if you don't, they'll do to you what they did to Curtis. The name hit me like a slap. I hadn't heard it since the first night, when she'd told me he wasn't supposed to show up yet. What did they do to him? She didn't answer. I grabbed her by the wrist. What did they do to him, Alma? She finally looked up. Her eyes were wet. They made him disappear twice, she whispered. Once from the world, and once from everyone's memory. Before I could even process what that meant, my phone buzzed again. Deliver it to the drain under 4th and Moss before 2 a.m. Do not speak to anyone. Do not open the case. Final chance. I looked at the time. 1:32 a.m. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. I grabbed the case, turned to Alma, and said, "You're coming with me." She didn't protest. We stepped out into the dark. No lights. No cars. Just a countdown ticking in my head. And somewhere under the city, something waiting for me. We drove in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't beg for conversation. The kind that keeps you alive. The metal case sat in my lap, cold and humming with some invisible weight. Every turn of the tires felt like it was pulling me further from the person I'd spent years pretending to be and closer to something else. Not a version of myself I liked, but maybe one I needed. The intersection of 4th and Moss was empty. Not a soul. Just a single blinking yellow light and the faint scent of rain on concrete. I spotted the storm drain immediately, square, rusted, tucked behind a broken section of curb like it had been forgotten by the city. But not by them. Alma stayed in the car. She didn't offer any final words. Didn't even look at me. I think she thought I wouldn't come back. Maybe I thought that too. I stepped out into the dark, walked to the drain, and crouched. Beneath the grate was a narrow slit in the concrete, just big enough for the case. I paused, case in hand, heart pounding. Then, something shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't angry. I was done. Instead of placing the case in the drain, I stood up, turned around, and walked back to the car. Alma looked confused at first, then panicked. "Merrill, what are you doing?" "I'm not playing," I said calmly, getting into the driver's seat. "Not anymore. They'll come after you," she said. "Let them." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, or maybe I'd finally found it. We drove back home. The power was still out, but I didn't care. I grabbed the case, went straight to the backyard, and buried it beneath the old apple tree that had never once grown an apple in its life. I didn't need to know what was inside. Whatever it was done using me. And the strangest part? They never came. Not the next day. Not the next week. No more texts. No more shadowy men. No black sedans. It just ended. 2 months later, Alma packed her things and left. Quietly. No explanations. No fights. Just a note that said, "Thank you for not becoming like them." I still don't know who they were. But I know who I am now. I moved out of that house. I changed my number. I started over. Bought a cabin 3 hours north, where no one knows my name, and I plant things that actually grow. I make new videos now, real ones. Things that matter to people. How to fix a fence. How to build a chair. How to start again. And that tree? The one where I buried the case? It finally grew its first apple this spring. Bright red. No worms. Perfect.